We have some people joining us. That's good. I'm not actually sure about all these time zones in here. I just added 5 hours from my time to the other ones, and but you know what time it is wherever you are in the world, so it really doesn't matter what's on the slide, right? So, so thank you for joining, everyone from all over the world. You could put it in the chat, but we have a own setup since we are a data plus map user group. So there will be a link that you can click on and put in your location, because we would like to, map everyone, not like physically where you are and stalk you, but just to have an overview of where people are in the world that are joining this Data Plus Maps user group that started last year. And we try to do this every 3-4 months. And we have some guest speakers from the community that we will go into. 3 of us from the leader group are signed in. Dennis, it's a bit early for him, but he will join soon as well. So we have people from Dennis from Canada, myself from Norway. We have George from Switzerland, and then Teddy from Jakarta in the evening time for him today. Housekeeping event will be recorded, which you already know that are watching this recording. That's a mind F, right? Because you if you see this as a recording, you see this later on, but whatever. Audio video is disabled. Q&A is open. So if you have any questions to the Data Plus Maps team or to the speakers, use that as well. And then, of course, enjoy the event. But this is the link that, if you want to, would be nice if you fill in this survey. Basically, just put in where you are located. And Dennis, hopefully, when he arrives, he will then gather all this data and compare to previous sessions we've had as well. And then we see where people are located all over the world. We are a Data Plus Map user group after all. So a tiny quick introduction as we are doing now. Then we are heading over to Spotlight a Data Fan member, Hall of Fame visionary, Lindsay. We'll talk to her about what or why she loves Tableau and data and maps. And then we're going to have a history of mapping and geospatial analytics in Tableau. That's a tongue twister there, Ross. But he's from Tableau as well, so he knows a lot of the history of Tableau, and we'll go through that. I remember when I started using Tableau version 7, which is now 13 years ago, I think, field maps was just introduced. And that was a big thing, yeah. Apparently, in those days.
You're right.
And then we'll finish up by all of you who are attending. If you do have any questions to the Data Plus Maps team or our presenters in here as well, anything related to Tableau maps, geospatial and analytics, you get some tips and tricks, please feel free to use the Q&A throughout this session as well. So cool to see that people are putting in where they're from in the chat, but also use that survey that I put in there so we can track this as well. So these are our 2 speakers today, or speaker and interviewee, or whatever you call it in English. I don't know, but we always do a spotlight of one Data Fan member, and then we have a presentation as well. So we do those both of those things in all our meetings. And we're starting with the spotlight session. So as always, of you guys, George or Teddy, have the public profile of Lindsay available. You can put it into, or maybe even Lindsay has it just on a shortcut on her keyboard. You can put it into the chat. But there's a lot of amazing things there, and we had a different type of meeting yesterday, and you talked about your history in the whole career, basically, in with Tableau as well, from being an ambassador and visionary, and looking at what you did in the beginning to where you are today. It's always amazing to see the what's it called, the change or the evolvement that people have. And that's what I always say to when I do training for people or talk to students as well. Keep everything in there, even the stuff that you didn't like, and you could go back and of course change or modify, because then you can see how you have evolved as well.
Absolutely.
So you are a director of data analytics and visualization, and at I did take that away from the from, because I didn't have room in my slide for.
Yeah. At what was Health Data Viz, we got acquired by an organization called Sellers Dorsey. So technically, we are now Health Data Viz, a Sellers Dorsey solution, because they did not have an analytics or data visualization group at all. So they acquired all of us. So
Yeah, and we always ask our spotlight person, what makes you tick? Which is of course a really grand question, I guess, but related to, of course, what we are talking about, and what is the topic of this user group.
yeah, so I had a hard time with this question, because I'm like, what does that really mean? Like what kind of gets me excited, or
what is it that makes you tick, that now I need to open up my Tableau desktop or prep to do something with this data and make something cool?
that's a good question. I think it's probably changed over the years, and part of that is due to certainly time and availability. So I think I'm a little more picky about what, and that's probably the wrong word, but I think what makes me tick or gets me really interested in something is probably much narrower now than maybe it used to be, because everything was exciting. I wanted to visualize everything I saw and every curiosity I had. But usually what ends up happening, and I don't know that this is super common, I end up wanting, for any visualization that I do, to learn some new skill or technique or try something I haven't done before, which often means it's not necessarily that I find the data first or like a curiosity there, but I find something I want to be able to do in the visualization, and then I kind of seek out almost like the data afterwards, which I feel is probably pretty backwards. But like, for example, and even like what you have up here, like that Zach Bryan visualization, at the time I was listening to a ton of music, and specifically also Zach Bryan. I ended up seeing him in concert in July, but it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to visualize his data because I was listening to it. It was that I had never used the MIDI files before, and I was like, I want to figure out how to do that, get the file. Could I figure out like the R script, and then could I visualize it, right? So it was sort of the technique that then got me thinking about, all right, well, if I have to find these files, who would I want to visualize? So yeah, I kind of go backwards, that, or I'll see what someone else has done. There's a visualization I did a while back that was it was really like an image I saw, I think on like Dribble or somewhere, and it was the one about I forget. It was a turbine energy one. It happened to be a makeover Monday long ago, but what I was actually trying to do was learn something in Figma, and how could I replicate this exact like layering design aspect, and then I had the data and made the visual. But it was because I wanted to learn this other thing in Figma that like literally drove why I did the visualization. That probably tends to be how I end up working. Sometimes I find data first, but often it's this other roundabout way of wanting to try a new skill or test something out.
Yeah, but then I guess also that has something to do with your many years of experience, right? So you don't build a Viz just to build a Viz. It's more to evolve on your own as well, to learn the new techniques.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Some kind of like way to challenge challenge myself, stretch a little bit.
Yeah, I remember when map layers was introduced, and the first visits we saw on Tableau Public wasn't on maps. It was when people were using map layers to build different maps, always in different layers of data. Hacking Tableau, that's always cool.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the ones you are showing right there, that Forbes cloud, which like literally makes probably no sense. But it was the same thing. I was like, I want to like do this thing and use one of Tristan's, extensions. And then also it was like, there's all these map layers in that I was just like, can I do this like strange, unnecessary visualization? But it tested me in a lot of ways. And so that's why, even though some of these don't make a whole lot of sense as to like why I thought to do them, there was like definitely a reason beneath it of, something I was trying to solve or challenge myself with. So
yeah. And then to continue on that, of course, when you talk about what gets you to tick, or also what inspires you, and that could be, of course, as you said, you go to a concert or you listen to some music, but so that's, I guess, one way of getting inspired. But also, is there anything else, or other people, other visualizations, or web pages?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty simple in that respect. I usually come from a perspective of also kind of similarly, like I look for ideas to spark what I want to visualize or how I want it to look. So I search often on like Dribble, which is a great site, but I don't necessarily look for exactly what I'm planning on visualizing. So a lot of times at work, and I work in healthcare, so let's pretend I need to visualize, I don't know, like a cancer dashboard I'm building. And I'm not going to type in like cancer dashboard or cancer infographic, but I might type in something sort of even unrelated, maybe tangentially related, just to see like what shows up. And often I'm looking at anything to inspire me. It could be a layout, it could be the colors scheme that I pick from, it could be some element that's in whatever the image is, and then I will completely like riff off that, and that will like take me down my design path. So I search there a lot. I look on Tableau Public all the time. I mean, it's always up on my browser. Again, just like either searching or seeing what's trending, anything like little piece that's going to spark my interest. But often I'm using those things for design purposes. As it relates to data, it could be completely random, something that I see out there. Someone sends me an email that has some link to something that as long as I can find the data, then I might start going down the path. But yeah, most of it's like design inspiration. Again, I'm usually not one who wants to spend too much time trying to find data, because that can be challenging. Which is why sometimes if you have an idea but then you got to figure out where can you find all the data you want, and I try to be, conservative with my time. Maybe I'm a little lazy there, that as long as the data is available, then I might find it. I also like reach out to people. Like a Dennis will know, there was a time I think he did a visualization of a map of like rivers. So it's like, where did you find that? Like, I don't want to go searching for it. You obviously found it. And then he showed me where the link was for that data, which was really helpful because I probably might not have found it. So I have to reach out to people like, where are you finding this data?
Yeah, that's what the data fam is for as well, right? So just ask if you are wondering how you build that, if someone hasn't made a blog post about it,
Exactly.
or if they haven't made it available for download for some reason, or they have some exciting data, just ask, and
oh yeah,
most likely you will get help or an answer.
Yep.
100%. And since we're talking about maps, I've looked at, of course, your profile as well. There's some cool maps that you've done as well. I also love the Jim Carrey one, because everybody loves Jim Carrey, right? But maybe not because of the maps, but because of the figure. But do you have any favorite maps?
Yeah, I do. I don't know if folks, this is kind of going in the way back machine too, but Johnny Walker used to be an individual who worked at Tableau. He got very into maps and moved on to actually work at Mapbox. But he had some really amazing maps, I think, that are still, I don't think his profile's up anymore, but really were amazing, particularly so many years ago. And if you don't know his work, I think I might have linked somewhere, but it was reminiscent of like Nat Geo, things that I recall, like looking in a book or a magazine that were really beautifully done with kind of all the text around it, and having a lot of stories about either like
bird migrations.
Like animals. There's one about sea turtles that was super beautiful. They were just fantastically done, and it got me initially really interested in maps because I had never really done maps outside of what Tableau natively did. I mean, this is, like I said, going back like 5 years at least. And I, at the time, started then getting involved with a little bit dabbling into Mapbox because that's what he was using. And he actually like did a little session with me, like one-on-one on how to use it. I still never really wrapped my head around Mapbox. It's super confusing to me, but I'm not the only one who's said that before. Although it's really powerful. I mean, I wish there was some better way to use the Mapbox Tableau to be able to do those custom maps. But so I think I really love maps that kind of tell that story. I have a passion for like animals and nature, and obviously maps are related to the world we live in. But when you layer in these different elements of location and movement, or I get like very like emotionally connected to the map then, because there's like some very interesting relatable story. So yeah, I mean, like I know Judith was on not too long ago or last time, but she has a map on like beer hiking, and I always think that one's super cool as well. It's like very simple. It just shows kind of the travel of things, and then some simple text. So the minimalistic type of style is great. And Dennis has one that I always love too, which was the one about the New York City condom program. And it was actually just the bright like lights of that whole map caught me. Just kind of the simplicity of using like just the dark background and these bright colors and where things were. So those have definitely stuck with me over time. And then while not necessarily the same of like maps, although it is, I still have like a love for like tile maps, particularly when kind of they're also done in the right way. Some of the ones I've seen out there with like the whole world as, in squares is kind of an interesting way to visualize countries. And the other thing also, as much as I don't do a lot of mapping, I do really like them because I think they're challenging in the way that often people work with like geographical data. And they're like, oh, I must use a map. So I feel like sometimes I get jaded of maps don't always need to be used, right? But when they're done well, they're just fascinating. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. I remember, I can't remember if it was a TC, like the big one or the TC Europe when those existed, that I went to a breakout session with Johnny Walker and looked at those maps and like, okay, he knows his stuff.
Yeah, I've always still wanted to do, kind of a map like the National Geographic type style map. It's always finding the data that's challenging. If I ever get the data that I really want, I wanted to do one on shipwrecks around the East Coast because I live near there, and there's a ton of them actually off the coast of New Jersey, and like they're just shipwrecks have always been a fascinating thing to me. I was obsessed with like the Titanic when I was younger, as maybe many people were. I don't know.
I would say, Lindsay, it's tough to find that data because
right?
I have looked for a lot of that kind of stuff.
Man, yeah. I was like, where is this? It's got to be there. I mean, we know they're there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, if anyone knows any shipwreck data, let me know because I still want to do
that. Next question is about your style. Do you have do we know it's Lindsay style, or do you have a favorite style, something that you always sprinkle on your visualizations?
Yeah, you know, when I was thinking about this, you know, while drinking a margarita in Mexico, it got me thinking, like, I wondered if how many people actually feel like they do have a style. And I certainly, if you were to put up different visualizations, I probably could, depending on who it is, there might be a good guess of somebody's. Whether or not they know they have a style is what I wonder. Like, do people think I have a style? I don't know if I do or don't, but as I was looking at my visualizations, I think it's ironic that I tend to use, I would always love to do like a color like analysis. I feel like I use a lot of like teals and purples, which is sort of interesting. I'm not a big purple person, but for some reason those colors tend to like show up in all my visualizations. They go well together, I guess. I do seem to have a lot of like, I don't know, maybe this is pretty common, but there's definitely a lot of like design things. I do use a lot of imagery, or I bring a lot of things from Figma that I create to kind of complement what I'm doing. And part of that is just, I like being creative, and I like testing my skills in both tools. So I use both of them a lot. So I find it hard to not want to do both things.
But is that also because in your day-to-day job you don't have that opportunity to that? Then it's more the boring business dashboards, or?
Well, I do. I mean, I'm in Figma every day as well. It's just that usually we're using it to like design out and, you know, prototype a dashboard, not necessarily bring the pieces into Tableau. So I get to be a little more free with, you know, creating elements to bring into the visualization or the type of infographic perhaps that I do. I don't know. Do people think I have a style? I always wanted to know.
Well, we can, if we go to, if I manage to go out of this one, we have your profile in here. So if we scroll down a bit, then we can see if there's anything that, well, you said purple, right? So
yeah, purple and teal. I don't know. They seem to pop a lot. But as I said before, I'm often like looking for styles, and if it's not like I'm trying to teach something to someone, I'm looking for kind of different color palettes and things. So I don't know why those colors seem to continually show up. Yeah, now we're going back in the Wayback Machine here.
yeah, maybe if you want me to stop, I can stop. That's fine.
No, it's fine. That's why you keep all your stuff up there. It's
yeah, exactly.
Don't ever get rid of your visualizations.
And since you have 200, is it plus visits there, and you've been using Tableau for ages, since version 8, I think you put in there. Do you have any tips and tricks or anything that you would like to share? I mean, it doesn't have to be just with maps, of course. In general, something that makes life easier for you and can do it for others as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. There's so many good things out there that folks do. I love, well, a couple things. One, I mean, I love using parameters all the time. There's so many different ways you can use those to be super creative in Tableau. I know that's like kind of not a real like tip or trick, but you know, even with map layers and that kind of thing, it has really been amazing. I have a lot of clients that they do a lot of mapping. There's one we've done for DC Health's opioid overdoses, and being able to do all these map layers with either like in one worksheet now to be able to switch between different spatial files and move from zip code to ward to census tract to neighborhood is just amazing. And to do that with parameters and make it so seamless to the user, or adding in different things like locations within these spatial files. So again, not necessarily a tip or trick, but I love that ability that we can do now. It really adds like so much value to the maps that I end up creating. I guess a really simple trick that I use a lot, because if you're ever using things like imagery, particularly like background images, which I don't do in my regular work, but here, I used to always get annoyed that if you were to update the image, like I would update something in Figma and export it, and then I would try to like go back, reconnect it to get it to refresh. I don't know if people know this, but all I have to do is delete the image and then press undo, and it like reconnects to your new file. So in 2 clicks, I can just refresh an image that I've had to update it. So I do that all the time to be a little more efficient than
I used to have to update like 6 images like every day. I wish I knew that. And then because they were like little thumbnails for like buttons.
all I do is delete it and press undo.
Getting jacked up. And so, yeah. So I was like, screw that. I'm just going to text.
Oh man, see now you know. There you go. Yeah, that's just a simple one that I use all the time.
And since we have Ross here, you could also then ask for one thing that what more do you want when it comes to maps in Tableau? What are you missing? What kind of feature?
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
I'm going off script here now, but
I know. I'm trying to think. What kind of feature I like?
you can think about it for a few seconds, then I can tell a short story about my country, from Norway, where 5 years ago we split some states and municipalities.
Yeah.
It took until September, then the following year before Tableau fixed it. And then, of course, it took another half year before Mapbox even bothered to do anything.
Yep.
So then Norway decided to combine the few again. Why? I don't know, but new government, new people. And then it took me till I asked Ryan Ate and Matthew Miller at DataFam Europe at the when you can speak and ask questions directly to the bosses. And then it took 1.5 months. Tableau fixed it. Mapbox still hasn't fixed it.
Yeah. Oh, that helped me. Now I know my answer. So there's actually like 2 things, because one is I wish that natively in Tableau there were the different map projections. It's great that people like have provided them, to get those like Mercator, the other projections that I think, we use this a lot in the US that just kind of looks better. You have like, obviously the Alaska and Hawaii in the view. And I think it would be great if those were available. Like I said, natively in Tableau, because it's kind of sometimes more difficult to bring all these things in depending on what you have. Wait, there was something else related to that. And also, even like, well, I'll leave it with that one. The other thing is sort of related. It is related to mapping, but it's more related to coloring. Is that a lot of times in maps, people are using like the bivariate color palette, which I think are, while they can be complicated to look at when you have all the 9 colors, it's a pretty common way in which maps are visualized from that color gradient, at least like in the wild. But creating those sorts of the calculations, but B, like the kind of like coloring can be a little more complicated. And I think that would be a really useful way for mapping to be able to more easily do those bivariate color gradients.
I see Ross is making notes. That's good.
Yeah, I had to do it for one of them. And I remember being like, why is it so challenging? It's like, this is like a common thing you see out there, but it just took a lot of hoops to
Lindsay, could you, are you talking about, I mean, you could make a custom color palette. Is that what you're talking about?
It's more about like, I guess, well, there's a lot of different, I have to look back at the visualization that I did, but yes, you can make custom color palettes, but you have to do it across like all these different sort of cut points and calculations to get it to work. And it's a common thing where you're crossing 2 different things and to be able to get these like 9 colors that work on a map. Again, I'd have to like look back at the visualization I did and what it would take both from like the actual calc side and then like the color part. But I remember you kind of have to like assign all these colors in like different ways.
Yeah, I mean, if
some kind of cross thing that like gives you the 9 colors. Like the other part of it is like the way they tend to do it actually is they take these 2 like the colors and kind of overlay them, and you get this like really nice predefined kind of color, and I had to kind of figure out how to make that myself. But I know there's a method to that madness that I think would lower the barrier for people to figure out. How to these,
well, I mean, if you kind of, I don't know, do a little write up and send me a couple pictures of that, those maps or those colors and things like that. Yeah, we could certainly float that up to our dev folks on that.
Certainly.
So people joining in this call, you have also a Q&A that you can fill in questions, of course, to both Lindsay and Ross and to the team in here. And of course, if you have ideas and suggestions, go to the ideas page as well. There's a whole bunch of ideas in there. And that's something I often get with people who are new to Tableau. But why doesn't Tableau do this? And well, go to ideas page and put it in there. Tableau can't add everything that everybody wants to have anyways. That's how it is. We are finishing up with the final question. What is your guilty pleasure? And or do you have any fun facts to share after being 1 week in Mexico? Or maybe you don't want to share that on video. Or that's
personal guilty pleasures. Is that what you mean? Oh yeah. Oh, geez. I don't know about guilty pleasures. There's a lot of things I enjoy. And my guilty pleasures, I love going to breweries and having some beers with friends. It's a great place to take children because it's always loud, and then my kids just nobody hears them. It's always fun. But yeah, outside of that, I don't know if I have a lot of guilty pleasures. I enjoy, running and hiking. I write poetry. I wish I read more, but I don't all the time. Oh, Legos is my guilty pleasure because they are not cheap. There's so many behind me. They're probably hard to tell up there. And then there's like a bunch sitting on this thing. And then there's a bunch in my basement that I've built that I don't have place to put anymore.
So Lindsay, my son is obsessed with the Titanic.
Yeah, but that one's, that's crazy.
And I mean, that's like a $700 or $800 Lego that
is big too.
So
they're crazy.
I grew up loving Legos, and it's fun now that I've got kids. They're getting into it, so I'm kind of like, kind of revisiting that. But
it's fun, and I can only do it if I'm following the directions for them, and I find it very very soothing and relaxing. And but my son can take all of his thousands that he has and like create stuff, which is just mind-blowing to me because I don't have that level of, I can do a lot of things creatively, but building in that way is just not in my skill set. And he'll just make these crazy things. He made like this pocket door the other day for like a castle. And he said, look, I made this door and it slides. I'm like, I don't know how you did that. Or like, he just made like a sword the other day and it's like 4 feet long. I'm like, that looks pretty good. Like, I don't know. He just does all these things. So Legos are pretty cool.
That's the amazing thing when if you look at the Lego Championship or whatever, the TV series when they're building stuff. It's amazing what people can do, but also looking at your profile on Tableau Public, it's also amazing what you can do with your favorite tool as well. So thank you, Lindsay. See you in San Diego in a month or so.
I will be there 40 days.
And then this guy as well. We're going to see him there. You're going to speak. You have a speaking spot, right? With Dennis?
2 actually. I'm doing a hands-on training and 1 with Dennis. So, Dennis, we gotta get together and figure out what we're doing. But well, Tori, thank you so much for letting me jump on here. I'm so happy we finally fixed the glitch for our our Norwegian provinces.
You could have been there last year, right? But we were not allowed before it was fixed.
That's right. No, but this is good. So let me share my screen. Let's do this. And
I didn't introduce you too much, but I guess you have a slide on yourself as well.
yeah. So so I have been with Tableau since 2014. I joined, I think it was 8.2, version 8.2. And a little bit of background about me. I've had a passion for maps my whole life. My father worked 30 plus years at the United States Geological Survey. And so just being around that, that kind of crowd. And then they had this map store in their headquarters, and they had an open house, and I went there, and they had these these topo maps, and I plastered my wall with these topo maps. And so I kind of grew up with maps. I was drawing with maps, playing lots of Legos, right? A lot of creativity. I love a very visual learner. And so when I joined Tableau, it was interesting because I looked at this, at the way Tableau engaged with data, and it was a very visual, obviously a very visual way of doing it, but it was very spatial in nature. Even though there wasn't, let's say, maps on something, the fact that you're seeing something visually instead of numbers, right? I'm not very good with coding. It's hard to look at, boring data tables. So having that drag and drop, that double click and something happens, really resonated for me, and really, kind of, I was kind of all in. Also, I internshipped at the National Geographic. I was lucky enough to do that for a summer and part of a fall semester in college. And I was doing research for like their educational media division and stuff like that. So it wasn't maps related, but I was kind of in the beehive of the geospatial world. Got a degree in geography, and I've been very lucky. I've been able to use that degree throughout my career. Not 100%, but there were times when I got to build maps and do some really cool things. But I've really enjoyed diving into and working at Tableau. And so when I came to Tableau in 2014, here I was, a GIS guy, and Tableau's mapping capabilities were pretty basic, right? They were the points and stuff, and that was it. But for me, it was kind of refreshing, right? So I really, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. Just double click and boom, a map. I don't need to go get imagery. I don't need to go find some shape file. I don't need to go, connect to some database and find, map layers and stuff like that. It was very simple. So here's a real brief history of me. I flew a bunch. I got private pilots. That's my other passion, is aviation. So you'll see a lot of aviation data on my profile. I lived in Germany for a year. That's Heidelberg, Germany. Beautiful, beautiful city. Some really good breweries in there. This is, of course, my family, my 3 kids, my wonderful wife, who have been super supportive of me. So I live in Washington, D.C., and that bridge right there, I took, I think that was when I was at boot camp in Seattle for Tableau. So that was definitely kind of a life changer. Working at Tableau has been incredible. And so it's been quite a journey in the last 10 years. So this is my best friend, Nate Bernash. He actually called me. But this is what you don't want to do, right? So Nate and I worked together for a little while. He was a former Tableau SE. And the funny thing, I always try and throw this picture up at most of my talks because he wasn't a GIS guy, but he was really smart. And we used to work on a project that it was like a surveying tool or aircraft that flew over and took imagery and stuff. And so he was measuring gimbal drift, right? But that is duct tape that's on his laptop. And he was so frustrated with ArcGIS that he couldn't figure out how far, some point is. But so that's, how we have come so far. So so I always kind of jump into this. This is our, if you've been looking at Tableau, you've always seen this. We help people see and understand our data, your data. And it's that visual, visceral understanding of your data. You're playing with your data, you're exploring with your data, and that kind of relates to maps too. And kind of why is Tableau different from a mapping perspective? And it really has to do with this evolution of the mapping capabilities. We never went and acquired a mapping tool, right? When you do that, when you do an acquisition of a company, it's kind of stepped, right? It's like you're trying to integrate this capabilities from apples to capabilities from oranges, and there's some lost in translation. When it's grown organically over time, it's very, it's really incorporated into the tool, right, into the platform. And I was talking to some dev folks, and I'm actually not in development. I'm a solutions engineer, but I've always had a good relationship with the folks in the development environments to kind of give them feedback and know what's going on. But when let's say there's some widget that they want to make, right? It's probably easy to make the widget, but how does it fit into the rest of the platform, right? So if we make a map, how do I create a crosstab from it, right? So like all that stuff needs to be, has to work seamlessly. So like the spatial parameters, like how does that work with other things and all these different things? So, it's grown organically over time. And I remember sitting in a meeting at a Tableau conference with a previous PM, Kent Martin, who I'm sure some of you guys remember. And it was actually with USGS, right? My dad's former place. And they were asking him about kind of like what really makes Tableau's development mindset. What's their mindset? And he basically said, Tableau's always been about answering data questions, right? So using visualization, using exploratory information, that ability to explore with data to answer those data questions. And over time, our customers came to us and said, hey, we've got more information and more spatially contextual information. Let's go with that. And so that's always driven kind of where we've gone, right? So we have come very far, right? So the very first version 4 of mapping, so in 2008, so we started in 2003, and by 2008, maps were put in. And look at what you can do today. I mean, you can do some amazing things. I mean, I could put a number of your visualizations, your maps into that part on the right. So many incredible, innovative things. So if you want to look at kind of a history of Tableau in general, there's a really good visualization by Jack McKinley, who was the kind of the former head of research for Tableau. I think he's retired a couple of years ago. Man, I was so lucky enough to sit in a few meetings with him with some of my customers. We used to take customers out to Seattle and meet the folks back in headquarters, and to listen to him talk about the science of visualization. And I think he said, I don't have it recorded, but he said the number one thing that people use in visualizations is time, right? Temporal data. So you think about it, people are analyzing stuff over time, right? That kind of makes sense. And he said geospatial is in the top there too. It's not, maybe it's number 2 or 3, but it's up there as a way that the people look at the world, right? Everybody has context for where they are, right? So if you have a map, I know Dennis is in Ottawa, I'm in Washington, Tori, you're in Norway, we have perspective. And so that gives you that, that context. So So here is a visualization that I've kind of built over time, showing our innovation over time. And if you go to my Tableau public page, you can see that this visualization, and it kind of gives you like this story, right? And so I really break things down into 3 big kind of chunks, right? 3 big time periods. Well, not like foundational is that early, hey, we've got this boring, hard to understand business data. We're visualizing it with bar charts and things like that. Oh, well, let's visualize where companies work, and how many Starbuckses are in a state, or those very basic things, right? And then we added a few little things like the filled maps, the choropleth maps. We added a few different map styles. We added a new back-end vendor. I'm trying to remember the name of the company. It was like Stata Maps or something before Mapbox. And then we added Mapbox. All these little foundational things to make the maps prettier, right, and more intuitive and a little bit more flexible. But it was all kind of that cartographic stuff, right? So, and when I first built this visualization, the area chart started at 0, right at the bottom. Right. But then I really thought about it, and I was looking at Jock McKinley's. There's a lot of things that needed to go into that first release of maps. So all these things were in version 4, right? And a lot of these things you take for granted, like show me small multiples, geocoding, pie charts on maps, if anybody does that. Offline maps, lat long, generated lat long, all kinds of those things. 4.1, we added WMS, right? If you have your own map service, you can plug that in. Or if you're working and you're not connected to the internet, to the outside internet, and you need to, use your corporate mapping service, or your agency or whatever. And then all these things kind of, this is that early foundational time space, more different styles, adding French and German, all those types of things, pan and zoom, dark maps. And so a lot of these little things that you kind of take for granted, those had to be added in those early days, right? So with time, our customers came to us, hey, these things are great and all, but I'm trying to map floods or fires or volcanic eruptions, things that don't adhere to political boundaries, right? So that's you're not going to answer some questions or make really cool maps without interesting data. So I'd say from 2007 to 2019, we really focused on adding connectivity to things like shapefiles. And I used to bug Francois endlessly about shapefiles. Like, we got to do this. And he's like, they're coming. And so finally they came in 10.3 or 10.3. And then that just we added more and more connections to different types of data. So these are your flat files, your shape files, UMLs, and then getting GeoJSON and those types of things. And then these are your more advanced platforms and your your kind of server environments. There's a lot of really cool things you can do with Postgres SQL, the PostGIS. There's it opens the toolbox. There's a lot of really cool things that you can do there in those environments, and then pull them in. So, which I probably won't go into, but anyway. And so here's some of these types of format. I mean, we kind of all know what these things are. But I usually, when I'm teaching this, I have to kind of show what these things are. So these point shapes, I have a connection to these things because my dad did a lot with water quality stations. And so, these are the point locations of stream gauges. My dad actually did a lot in the early 80s, late 70s to connect these little dots. They would have a little satellite receiver, and they would send the data up to satellite so that they could monitor the data remotely. Before that, people had to go out with clipboards and open the box and write things down. So, and then another interesting thing is, and also from the U.S. Geological Survey, they were tracking these white geese from Northern California, actually all the way up to Siberia. It's crazy. And so that was a lot of data, but it's a linear shapefile that you can use. And then the one in the background is a lava flow from Hawaii in 2018, and you can see just where that eruption occurred. So once we got those kind of data form into the platform, people could connect and plot these things, but they could really only visualize the map, right? They couldn't do that next level analytics. And that's where, and I feel like this right here is the line in the sand. So, in this early part, you have this spatial join, right? So spatial joining, I feel like really turned it for us, which enabled us to get into the analytics, right? So now that I have this lava flow and I have buildings, and I'll show this in a minute, you can now find where, how many buildings were taken out with this lava flow or a flood or a fire, right? We saw that in California. And so that spatial joining, kind of opened that door for us. And so the spatial functions came. So we had things like make point, make line were the first ones. I think distance was another one. Buffer came along. And so all these things just started to come into play. And so, another one, you mentioned map layering earlier. That really opened the door, because we were still, you could only do one layer, but you had the hack where you could copy and do a dual axis, and that was very limiting. But people found hacks around it, so they could do it. So doing things with Mapbox integration, which really was, I feel like there's a couple paths here of growth. Where you have really, really cool designers who want to make beautiful maps, that allowed people to really, make these stylistic or minimal maps in Mapbox and then bring them in, right? And then hex binning, which is a really powerful way of visualizing a lot of data that I feel like is a big thing. And then also spatial parameters, which I'll get into in a minute, which is pretty cool. And I've really dived into that in the last week or two. So I'm probably going to show a lot about spatial parameters at Tableau conference. So coming up. But make point. This is kind of where things got pretty cool, right? So here's our spatial files, early, 10.2, 10.4. The spatial join came in 2018 when we started renaming the way we name the platform or the versions. And then that really opened the door for the spatial functions. So why is MakePoint so cool? So you think about, there are 1.5 billion people in the world who use Excel, right? And so if there's any latitude and longitude data in there, you can now use MakePoint to convert it into a geometry, right? And I should have, and so when we had this release of MakePoint, we kind of changed our maps from a Cartesian grid to a geographic, right? So we're using, the curvature of the Earth, the projection, the Mercator. Sorry, Lindsay, only the web Mercator right now. But I've always wanted that feature too. But this allows you to put things on the globe, right? And allows you to figure out where things are. So it turns this, this kind of static CSV or text data into a geometry. And then that opens the doors for like joining it with, doing distance, buffer, intersects, and all those types of things, right? So, and so, yeah, here's that map layers, which was a game changer, big time. And not only for maps, like artists and really, really cool designers, were able in that early days to like, hey, I'm gonna really take this and run with this. But here's the idea of that spatial join is you have this flow chronology, which is a lava flow that's produced by the U.S. Geological Survey, and then a buildings file, right? So there's a really cool Bing website, or it's a GitHub website that I think the Bing Maps has like every building in the United States. So you can go find all the buildings for Hawaii and bring that in, right? And so this intersects, allows you to find that, how many buildings were inside of this lava flow, right? It's pretty awful. So, and here's map layers, right, for this same use case. And so, so I can just bring in all these different things, and so in the first version where map layers, you had to bring everything and join them, right? So I had to do this spatial join with the buildings, roads, and then TMK state is the property boundaries, right? So I had to join that, and then the second release of it, I could bring in other data in the background as context, right? So so this join right here, while it's a great thing, it can be performing, it can be very expensive from a performance standpoint. And so you got to be careful with what you join. And so here's an example with these wildfires that occurred a month and a half ago. You can go and get these fire polygons. And so this is, the data that they were capturing. It's polygons that are built by like some NASA satellites that looks at hotspots, and they track them, and then they interpolate where those things are. But here's that GitHub site. So you can literally find any, I think it's also worldwide too. You can also find countries, but you download it. Here's 11 million structures in California. I can do that spatial join. So I want all of the structures and the fire perimeter, or just the inside, the inner join. And so we're using geography to make that connection, right? And so here, the gray, all the gray is buildings that were unaffected, and the orange were the ones that were inside that perimeter. So using that intersects, so that is similar to the intersection, but you're kind of inside the workbook doing that spatial join. And again, this was also computationally expensive, right? This took, pulling in 11 million structures. I think I saw smoke coming out of my laptop. So it can be difficult. And so where I'm going with this, and this is where I've had my aha moment with spatial parameters, is now that you can use spatial parameters. So you can just bring these things in separately, and then you click on something and it does the intersect right there in a smaller way. So so this is kind of the result of those fires, roughly. So using the area function, intersects, I can see that there's looking at how much area of the buildings that are inside. So it's 47 million square feet of building space that was destroyed. It's insane. So we won't go through this, but This is on the blog for the Spatial Join, why they are awesome. So, you can use them, across all kinds of different data sets. And really helps with performance. So, let me see. Yeah, I want to go through a few things. So like this guy right here, I showed you earlier. So on my website, you are on my public page, you can go through this and kind of look through this history of these different things, and you can look at these are custom territories and airport codes, and more and more updates. Here's that lava flow right there, and going through there. So you can kind of play with this guy right here on my Tableau public page. But oh yeah, hex bins. So this came a few years ago. Actually, this is not a new thing. This is about 3 years old, probably. And I saw a video on YouTube from Andy Kriebel, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. He did this like Austin bike thing. And so this is a really important way of visualizing a lot of data. So if you look at this, so what this is a there's a global fishing initiative or something like that. So 1 in 5 fish are caught illegally every year. And so they have this data set out there. There's CSV for each day of 2020 worldwide. So using AIS data that ships, have. And so I unioned all that data together, and I got 226 million rows of data. There is no way that you're going to be able to visualize that with MakePoint. Like it literally just wouldn't render because it just would take so much. But what you can do is you can bin this data into these hex bins, right? And that allows you to look how fast this moves, right? So there's 12.9 million rows of data. There's 16 million and you can really see how and where these countries are fishing. It's really kind of an interesting thing. And so you can zoom in, and you can change this to, let's go to this. Let's see, 6. Yeah, so you can really zoom in and look at the density of where folks are fishing and where these countries are fishing and stuff like that. So it's a really cool way. It's actually very simple to build these calculations. And so you do hex bin, some type of longitude times a parameter, which is just kind of like this slider, right? So you can see this slider right here. So I can adjust this, and it changes the size of the hex bins, right? And so I can then kind of change this to just kind of see more detail. Now, that's the one drawback that I have with this is it's not dynamic, but I will say I should have put this up front. There's some things that folks are looking at. Well, I probably shouldn't say it, so I'll have to wait. But there may be some things coming in with being able to zoom and automatically do stuff with data. So I'll just leave it at that. So you'll have to wait for devs on stage. So. But
I forgot to do the forward-looking statement, right?
Yes, that's what exactly. Because that's the one thing. And look, for good reason, right? Development teams, they have things that come and go and priorities that shift outside of their control, and they develop things that may be cool, but then get reprioritized. So that's why we kind of have to say that, right? But anyway, yeah, it's a pretty easy calculation that you can use here. And again, I would go to Andy Kriebel's blog and look for Hexbin. He's got a great example of it, and you can download it. You can watch the video on YouTube, and it's a game changer for when you have large amounts of data, right? Huge amounts of data. Let me see. So let's go to here. So let's take that same example, that same Hawaii example, right? That Hawaiian example. And literally was playing with this last night. So what's really cool about spatial parameters is if we go back to this map. So if we look at this map, I've got these 3 layers. They are not spatially joined, right? But I really want to figure out, I want to have the ability to just kind of click and see, you know, it takes a little bit because it's a lot of data, but it's not that spatial join would take a lot longer. So you're kind of doing spatial join on the fly, right? And so there's, you know, a few buildings in there. And so again, this parameter, like all parameters, it's kind of like an elevator, right? They can go to any floor and get data that they want, right? And so you're not spatially joining data because this is a very small example. And this building data set is for the entire island of Hawaii, right? So I had to, in previous, let me see, is that the entire island chain? Yeah, so that's every island, every building on the island of Hawaii, all of the islands. In the past, when I was doing the spatial join, I had to go and I really trimmed it down to this little corner where that the lava flow is, which is like right here in this little corner. And so that, you know, now I don't have to worry about that. Here's the Hawaiian roads that are just for the county of Hawaii. I couldn't find one for the entire chain of islands, but this really allows you to kind of skip that spatial join there. So let's go back to let's go here. So I built this. This is also on my Tableau public page. This was like, you know, step 1 of what you could do with Tableau. This was like one of my very first visualizations with Tableau. This was how you could visualize flight traffic. You know, it was very basically on a Cartesian grid. This is like X, Y, and that's why those lines are straight, right? I could do something with dual axis, right? So I could now take the cities and plot the number of times I went from there, and then, you know, I could do choropleth maps, which was you know, the filled maps of the locations. Very, very basic. That was the early days. And then we got into like paging. You know, you could do some like, you know, page through the years and things like that. And then, you know, here's the spatial functions that come, you know, and like I said, so I am a data nerd, but I love to track where my flights are, you know, so you can see I go through Chicago. I do a lot of work in Ohio. And so this is, you know, using the make point. So all this data is CSV data. And so it really helped me learn prep. You know, you can bring all that stuff in. You know, you've got the route. So the route lines are not straight, you know, straight arrows and things like that. And then, you know, the hex bin, like I just showed, here's that same type of data. So really gives you the ability to kind of custom, like visualize lots and lots of data differently. And then here's the spatial parameters. So this is where I was like really geeking out. And this is what really taught me the spatial parameters, right? So, and if you go to my Tableau public page, I have I've got so much stuff open here. Let's go my public page. So I've got this cool. This is all my flight data that I use and track, and this really has been a science fair project for me since 2017 to use data to like understand and just it's kind of like my little sandbox to design and do really cool things. And so this is my full thing. So I wanted to dive in and really understand those spatial parameters. And I worked with FlightAware for a few years, and we were looking at activity within certain airspaces. And so I pulled that data into the map. So these big blocks are basically air traffic control centers, right? So if you're flying through Salt Lake City, you cross into that, they hand the pilots over and they communicate that. So I wanted to see, I was like, well, couldn't you just do a join and couldn't you just do a filter? Well, this is more kind of on demand, right? So now I'm clicking this, and of course it's not doing it there. Why is it? Let's go to the one online. That's weird. Let's go. There were some issues when I published it to Tableau public. And so if I click on it here, there we go. Well, I made it a menu. So select, and then it changes it pulls all the flight data into, I think I've got too much stuff open here. So let me turn this off. Yeah, I think I got too much stuff open. So yeah, of course, when you demo it, it does this. So anyway, I think that's really what I've got. If you go to my Tableau public page, there's lots and lots of stuff here that you can check out. That just has, I have a couple of my, where's my big brief here. This is, if you've seen me do a presentation, I put a lot of this up here. This is a TC from a session that I did for a Tableau conference. So, but Tori, I think that's about it. I mean, again, the history of Tableau has always been about just listening to the community and really driving, driving the direction of the tool. So, and where we're going, who knows? I mean, with all the AI, I think hopefully you'll see some innovation with AI and Tableau next, but we'll see. I'm kind of in the dark on it, so because I'm not in development. But yeah, so I think that's what I got. I'll kind of happy to answer any questions.
Pretty cool. Thank you. I think that I need to have one more look at your public profile and dive into more of your examples, because there's a lot of fun stuff in there.
Yeah,
no doubt about it. I think there was at least one question earlier about this. I think that was the first that area chart, if that was built with map layers, but that was probably
actually it wasn't. It's just a dual axis with a little bar and area. So yeah. And then I use those little show hide containers to just allow you to kind of see that. So yeah. If people have questions, put them in there in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll be happy to answer. And of course, if you're going to San Diego in a month or so, we will meet Ross live in person or also on stage. So and looking forward to the devs on stage as usual. Sounds like
something cool is coming there as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not that you've said anything, but
Yeah. So, yeah.
There's a question from Dennis. What would you really like to see added as a new Tableau feature if you could have been Lindsay, or yourself? What kind of stuff do you want to have to add?
I think my number one thing would be to be able to do a lot of the spatial calculations in Tableau Prep. They were working on it, and they had some stuff going, and then for whatever reason, well, I kind of know the reason. There's just been a huge shift in the developers been pulled over to the Salesforce side, so things get reprioritized. With all of the the performance, like I mentioned, the performance hits with spatial joins, while it's incredible to be able to do that, it was computationally expensive. And so I'm like, why can't we do this in Prep? Why do I have to render this in desktop to do certain things? So it would be nice to be able to kind of pre-package those things into Prep. So I think that's that was the one big thing that I wanted, and I'm hoping that we can still do that. But I think we're in a great place. I mean, obviously there's lots of other things that we can do. I get asked all the time, if we're competing with Esri and those types of things, and I always state, Esri is a very, very powerful platform. I was one of those Esri gearheads who loved it, loved it and breathed it. But it was hard to teach, and took years and years and years to get to there. I feel like Tableau's mapping capabilities is more approachable. It's more intuitive. And if you're a GIS professional and you're working with Esri, while you have a big toolbox, a lot of times you're trying to redraw polygons and drop data, and you're making data. In Tableau, you're really not making that data, you're really analyzing data that's already there, right? So that's always been our kind of our thing. Right. So, yeah.
Thank you. There's a couple of more questions or comments. What's your favorite underrated Tableau mapping hack?
Oh man. Well, that's I'm kind of like Dennis in the sense that I like to make very minimal maps, right? So I like to turn a lot of layers, a lot of background noise off. And sometimes I like to be able to just completely, I turn, like if I want to float like a map of, let's say, my county over top of a picture, and make a kind of Lindsay style map or visualization, a lot of really cool pictures and stuff. You can turn every layer off and then make the background transparent. That came about 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago, that ability to to make things transparent so you can put maps on top of pictures. So that really allows people to be more stylish. And like I said, a lot of these little features, not only could you do cool things with spatial functions and all these cool things, but it allowed the Dennises and you guys who are really good designers to make really cool looking maps. So there was this trajectory to enable the freedom of design. So
yeah, from Robert, he throws out one thing that he loved to see. Once you do things like spatial joins and filters to change the shape files that you imported,
yeah,
it would be great then to be able to export a salting shapefile, but that might be a bit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I always wanted that, just hey, I've done some cool analysis. I've added some content here, export as shapefile, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I mean, so one of the interesting things that I'm not sure people realize that, you can do some things in prep, right, with spatial files, and you retain that geometry, right? So you can, it becomes an extract, right? It's a hyper extract, but you still have that geometry. Like one example I did when I was really geeking out with spatial joins was I was looking at hurricane tracks, and the U.S. National Weather Service pushes these 5-day wind probability maps or shapefiles out, and so you can correlate the wind percentages with locations, and so they push out these updates every 6 hours. And so for 5 or 6 days, you've got like 12 or 15, 14 updates, and you can union all that data in prep and do some pretty cool things. And you retain the geometry in there. So there are some things, but yeah, I'd also it'd be nice to smooth shape files in Tableau, but there are things that you kind of got to go over to Esri or, QGIS to do, unfortunately. But
yeah. So that Lindsay was triggered by some image tricks, so she's going to write a blog post.
One of the coolest things I did with Lindsay, you made this really cool calendar visualization that was boss. That was totally cool. And I remember you threw it out there on your I'm like, oh my God, you got to write a blog about this, because I don't think you enabled the download or something like that, but you did do the blog like a month later, and it was awesome. And that's pretty cool. So
there's also a question from Pete here. Does anyone, and that goes to everyone in here, does anyone have a good recommendation for sources to build tile and or hexbin maps of the UK, both nationally and regionally? I guess most of us are, none of us are UK based, but maybe someone knows some specific sites.
One thing you could do, and I did this before the hexbin. I was bored one night and I saw a really cool map. You've seen like dotted maps of the world, like it's just kind of like a style, right? And I was like, there's got to be a data set out there of that. And so I couldn't find it. And so I was watching a hockey game, I was drinking a whiskey or something, and had my laptop, and I made an Excel spreadsheet of like the entire globe, latitude, longitude. I think it was like 1 degree. So I just made this thing. And then I took a shapefile and essentially stamped it and like cut it out. So then you had, call it the world of dots, I think. And so you have like these little countries of dots, and then you can link that to anything you want. So you could like mathematically build it a little bit more dense. And so you could do that, obviously in the UK, you could make it maybe a half a degree or, whatever. And so you could do that. See if I can find that sucker. Yeah, that you can certainly do that.
Yeah, Pete says thanks. Robert also have that's more of his use case. It's he works at the public school district, and our state actually makes us submit shape files to the state of Ohio for many of our 30 school boundaries. So he would love to create those himself from county auditor data.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you have the some shape files. You build your school districts out of that, and then
So COVID really taught me a lot about using county shapefiles, because I was making endless maps for states, and the data that we ship out of the box for Tableau is very is not really designed for you to look at stuff or measure, right, at at that low level. And so if you go to the U.S. Census Bureau, you can find that the shape file of those counties. I feel like there's this union function now that you can union. So if you have 2 or 3 counties, you can build this geographies. Yeah. So.
So Lindsay put in a link to Neil Richards, which I also put in before as well, with not the same one, but
darn it, really?
With this hex map of Europe. It has some nice visualizations.
Yeah,
Europe and then
I mean, the thing with the hexbin XY, that's like taking like raw data, the point data, and visualizing like densities with that. Now, the things that I think what you're talking is you just want a nice flat like hexagon grid. So that's where, you would have to mathematically build that out. But again, I got to do some really cool stuff with like FlightAware. They were analyzing airspace activity for a year over Ireland, right? That kind of stuff. I mean, it's like lots of data. Yeah,
exactly. You can use as Dennis says, you can create those hex grid in other type of tools, of course. But then the question, and as you also said, Ross, Tableau is not going to compete with those like pure geo tools either, I guess.
Yeah. Esri didn't really like us for a while there because we stole Kent Martin, and because Kent was at Esri for 10 years, and then he, that huge trajectory up was because of Kent. Man, that hurt when he left Tableau, but he's got to do his thing, and he's got to grow. So, I have friends at Esri, and one of my best friends was at Esri for a very long time. So,
Hopefully you have some friends in Mapbox so they can fix that Norway problem as well.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Here's something that I got this from 2 or 3 different customers, because I cover the U.S. government, and they're like, we have a request that Tableau is not plotting the Gulf of America properly. And so, like, I was like,
or whatever it's named these days, right?
Yeah. So it's like, you know what? You know how you fix that? Turn the water labels off.
Yeah.
Because that's also a Mapbox issue, and they're their own thing. So
then you can add in an annotation if you want to.
Yeah. I think a lot of people were going to like Apple and Google and clicking on the label and reporting it as an error. I saw that like on social media, like, if you want to get rid of this. So, but anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Lindsay. I'm just going to summarize or quickly now. We're getting by the end of today. There's something for those of you. You don't have to go to TC, but there's this VISI's award coming up every year. That's by the community for the community. And the reason why I put this in there is because you can vote for the TUG of the year, the Tableau user group of the year. You are now in a Tableau user group that haven't been nominated yet because last year we didn't exist. So if you like this user group, please take a minute to fill in this doc and vote for us if we're allowed to ask for that. But you see this Bunny is asking for help. In the beginning, you put in your locations, and we've done this now over 3 sessions, so you can see on the map where we are located. Even Null Island is represented. That's cool. That's something that annoys me a bit, that web page Null Island has disappeared, because I always show that when I'm doing Tableau training and showing that when you show data at null, but that was a nice web page where you can go and look at how that fictitious island look like and how you can travel there.
I saw a pretty cool thing where this guy showed like 7 or 8 maps. He's like, tell me what is similar to all these maps are the same, and they all had New Zealand missing. Like, he's like, you know, because it's just like this small island, and yeah, it just
it's not that small,
here.
but
Yeah.
Since we already have had a lot of questions and we have tried to answer those, I think that this part of the session is already done, unless I see any more questions. I don't see any more, I think, in the Q&A or in the chat one. So thank you all for joining. We still have this ChatGPT made logo, and we have been extending this deadline so many times, but apparently nobody bothers to or wants to win a potential of $100 of a gift card to the Tableau swag store. So if you don't, by the end of April, give us a logo or a banner. We'll stick to the one we have, and we'll get some swag for ourselves, I guess, for those $100. Next meetup will be in May, June. We haven't decided the date yet. If you're interested to be a speaker, you can apply in here. Otherwise, there will be one keynote like today. There will be one spotlight as well. So looking forward to your applications, and looking forward to the next meetup. And for those of you going to San Diego, see you in a bit over a month. And then you can plot in some more flights on your map there, Ross, as well.
Definitely. Awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Have a nice
Thank you, Ross.
morning, afternoon, evening.
Yeah.